Hello and welcome to Video Game Hangover. I'm Randy Dickinson and I'm in Harrisburg, Transylvania.
Ooh, I'm DJ Ross from Beyond the Grave. Ooh.
Beyond the Grave?
Beyond the Grave. I don't know why I said that. I had this sort of premonition in my mind that that's what I should say.
Yeah, I feel like maybe I missed a headline somewhere. I'm sorry to hear that you're Beyond the Grave.
Yeah, why am I Beyond the Grave? That's surprising and a little disappointing, actually.
Aw, yeah.
To me, anyway.
I figured I would have been one of the first 4 or 5 phone calls.
Okay, yeah. You're on my speed dial list for when I pass on, apparently.
Untimely demise. Who do we call? DJ's parents?
Yeah.
Randy?
That's all.
That's the top 3. I'm in your top 3.
Yeah.
Your boss, probably your boss, right? I imagine that's
he'll figure it out eventually.
Your landlord. Who else? Who else would miss you?
Tell them to cancel my Final Fantasy subscription. Don't want to keep that rolling.
Exactly. But preserve your character and all that it's accomplished.
Yeah. Of course.
I'm going to retire your number, hang up your jersey somewhere.
Exactly.
That was a sports metaphor for anybody who's not used to hearing those from me.
Oh, no, I got it.
Okay. Each week here on Video Game Hangover, we talk about the games that have been keeping us up at night. This week, it's our Halloween show with spooky games like Ghostwire Tokyo, Pumpkin Jack, A Pet Shop After Dark, The Excavation of Hobbs Barrow, and Cult of the Lamb's Blood Moon Festival.
Ooh.
That is quite a list of spooky games.
It's a lot of games. What are we doing?
A ton.
Be a 3-hour episode.
Perhaps maybe we've overcommitted.
I think it'll be fine.
You can't play spooky games the rest of the year. You have to cram them all in on October 29th.
Right. Yes, exactly. Although, I've been attempting to for the rest of the month.
You have been. You've been much more structured about this thing, kind of measuring it out over the course of the month.
As we mentioned last week, I have a lot of spooky games to get through. So,
yeah.
And you can't do it after Halloween. If you miss that deadline, you have to wait an entire year for October to come around again.
It's like Animal Crossing, unless you time travel, in which case you're labeled a cheater and kicked out of the Discord.
Is Halloween over? Like Halloween season is over on November 1st in Animal Crossing?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
all right.
November.
Well, that's the way to do it. Then
November 1st, Animal Crossing, you transition to harvest season, which is Thanksgiving. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, they have a real rigid holiday calendar in that game.
Yep. Yeah. I'm like, I'm still collecting shells. What are we doing? Before we jump into the Halloween festivities, we should mention that Extra Life 2022 is right around the corner. This will be our 9th year participating in the 25-hour gaming marathon to support children's hospitals in our communities. Coming up on Saturday, November 5th. Man, DJ and I, speaking of overcommitting, are going to play a lot of video games in that 25-hour window. So we would love for you to watch, to cheer us on, to support our streams, to donate to this amazing charity. We're going to do some games like Trombone Champ, Spelunky, Animal Crossing, Vampire Survivors. I'm going to play Vampire
Survivors. I heard of that one.
Slay the Spire. Yeah, I am. Yeah. Are you going to play it?
Oh, of course.
Okay.
That might be the only thing.
Splatoon. No, I just gonna alternate between Trombone Champ and Vampire Survivors all day.
Best/worst day of my life.
Right, exactly. All trombone and all vampires all the time. What else? Star Trek Bridge Crew. We're gonna do some Star Trek stuff.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Yep.
Back to the best day of my life.
Splatoon 3 and probably a lot more to be determined.
The Bridge Crew thing, best day of my life / worst day of Randy's life.
Yeah, we should publish the transcript of you asking if I wanted to play that. And I'm like,
Good news. I roped him into it, so now it's happening. So you definitely don't want to miss that.
Yeah. Yeah. So gotta play some Star Trek. It should be confusing.
Should be good. Yeah. No, yeah. Can't go wrong with confusing.
So DJ, where can people get more info about Extra Life and our plans for that big day?
You can go over to VGHangover.com/extralife or just VGHangover.com. The post is right up at the top. But from that address, you can find the schedule of what we'll be playing, which is newly updated as of when this episode comes out. You can find how to join us for some multiplayer, perhaps. And also that all-important link to donate a few bucks to our campaign, which would be very much appreciated.
Yeah.
And also, if you're not able to donate, or whether you don't want to, or you're just not able to this year for whatever reason,
Times
that's
are tough.
perfectly fine. Yeah,
we get it.
We're not holding it against you, but we still love it if you just drop by the stream. That's at twitch.tv/VGHangover, and just hang out in the chat or on the Discord or whatever to cheer us on, like you said earlier.
I don't stream a lot. It's kind of the one time a year that I sort of am somewhat disciplined about streaming video games. So that also promises to be confusing. So we'll see how that goes. So it's gonna be just a confusing day all around.
Tune in just for that. You're gonna have your ring light going.
Yeah.
Your little anime girl VTuber avatar. I'm told. Sure.
TikTok dances at the top of every hour. Yeah.
Yes. I don't know what that is.
I'm gonna do that. It's the only TikTok dance I can think of is the backpack kid doing the flossing. Is that what that's called?
Flossing. I was just gonna ask if you're gonna floss, but is that the backpack kid does that?
I'm gonna floss on cam, much to everyone's disgust.
Tune in. Jeez. Tune in to just see two old men on the stream confused about what streaming is about.
The tickety talk and the hippity hop. We're gonna do all of it.
Oh, boy. Oh man. Is it too late to opt out of this?
No. Oh no, we are opted way in.
Opted way in. All right. I guess better do it.
Yep. Children's hospitals are relying on us, DJ.
That's true. Yeah, anything for a good cause.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's next weekend. That's coming out real soon.
Yeah, Saturday, November 5th. We're going to start the wee small hours of the morning. I will start here on the East Coast, and DJ will take it home on the West Coast. So VGHangover.com for all kinds of extra info there on how you can help us out, keep us going.
Yeah.
Speaking of keeping it going, Spooky Saturday, the final Spooky Saturday is upon us.
Spooky Saturdays continue. Is it the final one? There might be. No, maybe it is. Yeah, there's one more, and then there's Extra Life, so the spookiest Saturday. But one more Saturday in October, on which I will be playing Heaven Dust 2, this is actually a recommendation from Cube00 in the VG Hangover Discord. This looks like a cool sort of isometric, kind of cartoony take on a Resident Evil style survival horror game.
Oh.
And similar to Yomawari from a couple weeks ago, I'm just like, how scary could this possibly be? I mean, it looks like it has a little more in line with, sort of the typical spooky monsters you would expect to see in a survival game. But, I'm curious. We're going to see how it goes.
Oh, this looks really kind of neat looking.
Yeah, it looks fun, right?
Yeah.
So, should be interesting.
What was that game? Phantom Dust. That was the one I was thinking. I'm like,
no, very different game.
That's not spooky.
No, not at all.
Cool. All right. Well, that is coming up this Saturday night. That is the the 29th, right?
29th, yeah.
Yeah. Cool. We should jump into this massive list of games here. I have two quick shots I want to do. Pumpkin Jack and the Cult of the Lamb Halloween thing.
Yes, you sort of hinted that there was going to be a Cult of the Lamb event happening.
Yeah. So I've been continuing to chip away at Cult of the Lamb a little bit over time. I went real hard with this game when it first came out and was really into it. You can roll back a couple of weeks to the episode where I talked about it, but essentially you are a lamb who has been sacrificed, resurrected, and is now trying to run a cult to expel some of the old gods who have done you foul.
Yeah,
and it is it gets into the entire minutia of running a cult. Like, how do you feed your cultists? How do you where do they sleep at night? And then you have to sort of run campaigns and raids and yeah, and basically get new followers and continue to grow the size of your cult, etc., etc. Lather, rinse, repeat. Therein is the video game. They have just updated it this week with this Halloween little add-on thing called the Blood Moon Festival. And it's a fun, spooky little ritual that you can do right there at the temple in your home base, in your cult base. If you donate 40 pumpkins, which are a thing you can grow in your garden, you would otherwise feed those to your cultists. So rather than giving them food, you're going to sacrifice the pumpkins to the Blood Moon Festival, which causes any cultists who have died to rise from the grave and haunt your cult compound. So they float around at night like spooky
And is this
ghosts.
something you want?
Well, I think it's just kind of creepy and fun. Like much of what happens in Cult of the Lamb, none of it has horrifying consequences. None of it's going to keep you up at night. It's just kind of spooky, ethereal, kind of ghostly versions of cultists who have come and gone and passed in the course of the game. So now they're ghosts and they're wandering around. And you have to do little rituals to kind of capture them. And the course of doing that gives you credits that you can use to turn in to buy fun little Halloween decorations to put all over your cult compound.
All right, now we're talking. That's what I want.
Yeah. You also get, there's a bunch of different unlockable archetypes for different types of cultists that you can get throughout the course of the game. I think the game has something like 40 different ones. This little Halloween add-on adds 3 new kind of spooky looking ones, kind of Cthulhu inspired with a pentagram on their forehead and stuff like that. So it's kind of goofy, but also kind of fun. And yeah, it just launched this week. It's free if you're playing Cult of the Lamb. It fires up as soon as you start the game. It runs until early November, so you're not on a super hardcore October 31st deadline if you want to check it out. But
it does end.
It does end. It is limited time only. Yeah. So
interesting. Yeah. Because this is not, well, I forget what we decided on this. Is this something people seem expected to just keep playing throughout the year?
There has not been anything in Cult of the Lamb that has happened like this. So the developer's been very clear that the game has sold way better than maybe anybody expected. And they have a little link that pops up now at the start of the game that says Cult of the Lamb's future roadmap. And when you click on it, it says more DLC is coming. No details to share at this time. So it feels like maybe this is the first piece of that, the first sort of attempt long-term at keeping Cult of the Lamb kind of alive. There's chat on their Twitter about adding more dungeons and an additional old god and things like that, but none of that's been announced yet. So this is the first little fun thing, little extra, little maybe a seasonal thing that they're going to add. I don't know. It seems unlikely that they would do a Cult of the Lamb Christmas pack or something like that. It doesn't seem particularly on brand, but who knows? So I don't know if they're going to hit all the major holidays, or if this is just sort of a one-off for Halloween. Again, no other information has been revealed at this time. It's just fun that there is, an extra little thing to do in Cult of the Lamb now.
And also, it's not like this is in real time, right? So if you had stopped playing this game weeks ago because you finished it or whatever, you could easily pick this up again, and it's not like your cult would be overrun by weeds or something like that. Like if you tried to do this with Animal Crossing. Right.
Yeah. So, the game pauses when you go to sleep at night. So you don't run the risk of your cultists starving to death while you play other video games and things like that. Yeah. I mean, there is sort of an endlessly replayable faction to the game, in that it is kind of a roguelite. And that you can remix and redo the dungeon crawling bits over and over. You can continue to grow your cult even beyond vanquishing the 4 old gods that sort of are the original hook of the plot here. But yeah, you're really just sort of trying to play with and exploit the boundaries of how far you can go with the tools in the game. Yeah. It's not really objective based at that point. It's just how long can I keep people alive?
I have to say I'm a little disappointed that it is limited, because I think I would actually like to play this at some point, but I probably won't get around to it before this event ends.
If you'll get to it before, I think November 10th is when it falls off. So
Okay. Oh, so I have a little longer than I thought, but
a little bit of time.
Yeah, that's still kind of a bummer.
Yeah. I mean, these things might circle around for next year. If it's like Animal Crossing, maybe they'll fire it up again next October.
I imagine it'll come back. It's just weird that... I mean, this is kind of the same situation I asked about with when we were talking about Ooblets, which is that is also not a sort of real-time game like Animal Crossing, and it has its own Halloween event, but that is also just assigned to sort of an arbitrary calendar period.
Yeah. And again, like, I think, and this is probably the only place where Cult of the Lamb and Ooblets intersect. Halloween is the first time either of those games, in the time that I've played them, have done some sort of seasonal event. It seems very sort of built into the the Animal Crossing loop that Ooblets is trying to achieve. I suspect there'll be more of that as that game progresses, but Cult of the Lamb, felt like a very sort of beginning, middle, and end kind of experience when it first came out. So it's cool that the developers are continuing to look for ways to kind of add to that package.
I wonder what it is about Halloween. It seems like games especially enjoy stuffing Halloween events into their games.
Yeah, I think it's fun. I mean, who doesn't like Halloween? Obviously, you and I have done every year. We do quite a roll up to Halloween. I think it allows you to do something kind of creative and kind of fun and cosmetic and spooky and spoopy in your little video game every Halloween. Without sort of breaking maybe the gentle mechanics that already run your games.
Sure. Everyone loves a little spooky ghost costume.
Yeah. So I was right. This does run until November 10th. So you've got a little bit of time to check out the Blood Moon Festival in Cult of the Lamb.
See if I can squeeze it in.
Yeah. The other thing I want to talk about was Pumpkin Jack. This is just the most generic Halloween video game you could possibly find. This came out a year ago. It was it popped up in the I was gonna say the Halloween eShop, the Switch eShop, and you play a scarecrow essentially doing a platformer. You're like hopping across moving platforms and battling little mummies and other monsters and stuff. And I was like, oh, this kind of looks like fun. It looks kind of cute, but I don't want to spend a lot of money on this. And it was surprisingly expensive when it first came out. I think it was like $30. I'm like, maybe it'll go on sale. And then Halloween, a year later, it went on sale. So I played some of Pumpkin Jack over the weekend. It is it's fun. It's an inoffensive, sort of not terribly challenging platformer where you do exactly those things. You basically fight against other little otherworldly monsters as a scarecrow. You do things like take off your head. It's a pumpkin, and you can roll it and throw it around. And then there are windmills inexplicably that have platforms swinging from them, and you jump from them and try to get your timing right so that you don't fall into the whatever below. And it kind of does all the things that you would think, a platformer would do, except it has this whole spooky Halloweeny graveyards and crows and
it's like it's a 2D platformer?
3D platformer.
3D, okay.
Yeah. So it's fine. It really I don't know, like if you set out to make a game like this, how do you determine sort of what your market is, your niche? Like, are we trying to create sort of a tough as nails Super Meat Boy kind of platformer? Are we trying to make a Jack and Daxter or a Ratchet and Clank kind of mascot platformer? I don't know what their sort of operating scheme was for how they were going to assemble and package Pumpkin Jack, but it feels just kind of bland throughout. It doesn't really it doesn't put up much of a challenge. It's not significantly there's no part of it where I'm sort of like, oh, that was really fun. They should have done more of that. It just sort of is. You just, okay, I jumped across a couple of things. Oh, there's two mummies. I have to beat them up. You get a couple of little moves and some little unlockables. Eventually there's a crow that rides around on the top of your pumpkin and he flies out and can do long ranged attacks. those are kind of satisfying. But
it just feels like somebody wanted to make a game for the Halloween season.
Yes.
And, that came before the plan for the actual game.
Yeah. Do you remember back in the era of like Flash games where like there was like the penguin bowling? There was like Santa Claus was bowling.
Oh, sure,
like,
sure.
And all the pins were penguins, and it was like a Christmas game that people shared on the internet. This feels like a Halloween game that people share on the internet.
That's really brutal.
I'm sure love and hard work went into this thing. I certainly don't want to disparage anybody's efforts at making Pumpkin Jack, but I'm Mr. Halloween. I love all of this stuff, and I could barely rouse any enthusiasm for continuing to play this game. I think I got maybe an hour and a half into it. I was like, I've seen enough. I get it. I understand what you're doing, Pumpkin Jack.
Oh, that's disappointing. That is disappointing.
Yeah. So not as disappointing as it would have been if I'd spent $30 on it. But
okay, yeah, sure.
For the budget price, I think it's going for like 10 now in the eShop. That's probably fine. I mean, maybe if you have kids around, maybe it would be more fun. I just didn't, I want it to either be harder or scarier or certainly more creative. And it was just a lot of reused assets and a lot of reused sound effects. Like Pumpkin Jack makes the same exact sound effect every single time he takes a shot from an enemy. And it's this kind of sound. And they just keep looping it over and over and over every time you take a hit. Like there's no variation on it. And I'm like, this feels like it was done in a very limited number of resources available. So it's fine for what it is. It doesn't sort of aspire to be more, and it doesn't succeed at being more. Yeah. So
disappointing.
If you have a limited amount of gaming time this Halloween season, perhaps Pumpkin Jack not the way to go.
You know what I like to do is, in Final Fantasy, of course, just slap on that jack-o'-lantern hat that they give everybody and my spooky robes, and then suddenly I'm just a scarecrow in that game, and I can go around and just do whatever I enjoy doing anyway. Except
there you go.
It feels more Halloween-y. It suddenly becomes a Halloween game.
Perfect.
But it's like I'll do that in Animal Crossing too. That's also fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was just thinking, like, maybe I do need a Halloween game I can play every October, but then I realized, like, I just take other games that exist and turn them into a Halloween game.
It was one of the things that I remember about sort of the very limited amount of time I've played Destiny or Destiny 2 in my life. It is both the times have sort of coincided with Extra Life, which is almost always sort of the week after Halloween every year. And whenever I jump into it, it's sort of whatever the in-game version of Halloween is. So everything has kind of spooky, like Christmas lights, Halloween lights all over the place. And all the vendors have fun little, accessories and costumes and things like that. They're like pumpkins and jack-o'-lanterns and little skeletons and things. And I'm like, oh man, is Destiny like this all the time? Because this is super fun. But no, it's just their little Halloween thing.
Yeah. I do like when they're in-game decorations. That's super fun.
Yeah.
But in Destiny, you can't tell that you're wearing a pumpkin hat because it's in first person.
No, but you can tell when other people are. So.
Okay, but I want to be reminded that I am a spooky jack-o'-lantern person.
Right. Yeah. What was the other one I saw this week that seemed like, that's sort of right on brand? The Fall Guys. Fall Guys is doing a Halloween.
I was gonna say, Fall Guys has got to have something.
Yeah,
cool.
And they have Jack and Sally and Oogie Boogie from Nightmare Before Christmas in there as little costumes you can get and stuff. And I'm like, oh, that's fantastic. I love that. So yeah, that's fun. Halloween's just a good time. I like when video games just really kind of go hard, or even not go hard, just sort of like go a little bit in the direction
just go medium.
Just enough. Yeah. I'll take a skull mask in a game that otherwise would not make sense to have a skull mask in, just for a couple of weeks around, December 31st.
Sure. Yeah, no, good jack-o'-lantern head is my favorite. Or just like a witch hat or whatever.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Well, sorry to hear about Pumpkin Jack.
Yeah. Other end of the spectrum, though, is the Cult of the Lamb thing was super fun. So
nice. Yeah.
So yeah. I have Ghostwire Tokyo I want to talk about too, but we should switch to some of your spooky games. What did you dig into this past week?
Yeah, I played a couple of things, a couple of spooky games, or did I? No, I definitely played a bunch of stuff this weekend.
I saw that Spooky Saturday got pushed into Spooky Sunday even.
I know, yeah. Like I said, I was just too ambitious this year. I started off with Pet Shop After Dark on Saturday. This is an indie game by this developer, NPCKC. I'm not sure if they have a specific way to pronounce that, but this caught my eye because this has like the absolute most delightful art style. It is a 2D point-and-click adventure game, and all the character art are just these ridiculous-looking, sort of bug-eyed cartoon characters with incredibly blank expressions on their faces. One of them is sort of this unassuming sort of, I don't know what she is supposed to be, just the average person. And then the other is the pet shop owner, who looks like this spooky witch. She's got like this long black robe and a little like top hat, I think. I don't think it's a witch hat even. But just these big sort of half-moon eyes and a similarly blank expression. And I was just like, okay, I have to know what is going on with these characters because this looks incredible. And it was also billed as a horror point-and-click adventure, which, just looking at the graphics, you would never suspect it of being spooky at all. Because they just look like these silly cartoon characters.
Yeah.
So I was in as soon as I saw these screenshots. The premise of the game is you are working a shift at this pet shop where you have to feed the pets, you have to water some plants, because I guess it's also a plant shop. And it says, whatever you do, don't turn off the lights. Which is like, oh, well, that's slightly ominous.
Never get them wet. Don't feed them after midnight.
Yeah, yes, exactly. I think that's in the page description somewhere.
Sure.
So I was like, okay, I wonder what happens when you turn off the lights. So I started up this game, and there's this other note on the game page which I thought was interesting, which says, it goes through all the bullet points where it talks about how you feed the pets and all that, and then it says as a final note, crashes are intentional. so I thought, oh, interesting. Either they're just covering themselves for when their game crashes unexpectedly, or there's something a little weird going on with this game.
Yeah.
So I got right into it, and it really is like, I feel like it's almost a visual novel in the way that it's presented, where a lot of it is just it starts out with this unsuspecting girl talking to the pet shop owner about her responsibilities at the pet shop and how she's not supposed to turn off the lights ever. And then the owner leaves, and she is left just sort of talking to herself about how weird this job is. But then you just immediately go about your sort of pet shop responsibilities. You feed the pets, which incidentally are all invisible. Like you see these cages in the main room of the pet shop and this big empty fish tank, but there's nothing in the cages. And yet somehow whenever you put food into the cages and the fish tank, like something eats it. So there's something weird going on. And then you water the plants, and then you're kind of just done. And I don't know if I want to give away what happens after that, but you're tasked with, like, the job description says you have to, feed the pets and water the plants, and then spend one night there at the pet shop. Like, you're not allowed to leave, which is also weird. Like, why wouldn't you be able to leave a pet shop? But that's just part of the job, and you're being paid a lot of money, apparently, so you just go along with it. And then, needless to say, strange things start to happen.
I hope you turn off the lights at some point.
Yeah, you do, not to give anything away, but
okay, yeah.
You do turn off the lights.
Okay.
And I think in order to really talk about how the rest of this game unfolds, I need to give away how you solve the first real puzzle around the lights. So I hope that's okay. If you want to go into this completely blind, just, skip ahead to the next segment. But you end up, you have this sort of inkling that, oh, maybe you should turn off the lights. But you realize there are no light switches to be seen anywhere in the pet shop, which is confusing because then you have no way to turn off the lights. And it keeps sort of like hinting at you that, there is a way to turn off the lights. And eventually how you end up having to do it is you go into the folder where you downloaded A Pet Shop After Dark from the internet. and you will see there are folders named after all of the rooms in the pet shop. And in one of them, there is a light switch folder, and you just delete it from the game folder. And then the lights go off. And then more things start to happen from that point. But
interesting.
It really sort of sets the tone for the rest of the game. It's like, oh, okay, so I'm going to be spending some time kind of outside the game to solve puzzles in this one, which I thought was very cool. That very rarely happens in games.
That's really neat. I kind of dig that.
Yeah, so as soon as I sort of realized that, I thought, oh, wow, so all bets are off with this thing. And from there, it just turns into a mix of, like, more traditional puzzles, traditional in that they take place inside the game in their entirety. But there are also a lot of situations where you just have to poke around in the game files, and, you know, it's not always as simple as deleting something. Sometimes you need to, well, I'm not going to give away what else you have to do, but it requires a lot of, like, outside-the-box thinking, so to speak, which was very refreshing and very different from most puzzle games that I play, or most adventure games that I play.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, I really enjoyed that sort of aspect of it, even though it was a little difficult to wrap my head around at first in terms of just what it was expecting you to do or, like, how far it wanted you to go.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't that would almost never be my default for approaching a video game. So I'm without giving anything away, I hope there were enough sort of context clues kind of in the game to lead you in the direction of making that choice, because I would never have accidentally stumbled upon that.
So I think a big help was the fact that I saw that bullet point where it says, like, yeah, sometimes this game just crashes, and that's on purpose. So that's what got me thinking, like, okay, so maybe there's something else going on with this.
Yeah. I was thinking of, like, did you ever play Eternal Darkness on the GameCube?
I did a little bit, but yeah, I know where you're going with this.
Okay, yeah, there are parts of that game where it sort of, like, pretends like your GameCube has crashed and you've blue screened on that.
Right.
And it's all part of sort of the context of the game. The game didn't actually crash, but that is one of the few games I can think of that sort of used, like, I don't know, the limited influence a video game can have on the outside world and your perception of it, anyways, on your experience playing the game inside the system. So yeah, I admired that fun little thing about that game. So when you said, you know, crashes are intentional, I was like, oh, maybe it's like that game.
Yeah.
But they've gone, it seems, even a step further. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely gets you a little more involved than something like Eternal Darkness. But that's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
There were a few cases, I mean, man, the puzzles in this are also just kind of a step beyond what I expect from an adventure game, or even something like Professor Layton, in terms of what you're expected to do, or sort of like where you're expected to go for the solutions. And I almost think maybe it was a mistake, because I was playing this for the Spooky Saturday stream, and it was this weird situation where I think a couple of the puzzles I probably would have, like, been able to get through if I had just been able to sort of put the game down for a few hours and come back to them with a new perspective. But the fact that I was just going through this live, it kind of put this pressure on, like, oh, I can't really just walk away. And, you know, how interesting is it to see me just, you know, scratching my head for an hour and a half on camera, trying to get through the solution to this puzzle. Fortunately, there's like a little hint system built in, so that got me through one of them. But then there was this other puzzle later on, which, again, very sort of confusing and cleverly designed. I want to say, like, maybe I would have come up with a solution given enough time, but given the sort of time pressure, and I also just think this later puzzle was a little confusingly designed. Like, the solution, or the way you're meant to arrive at the solution is a little is not the best. But I just ended up straight up looking up a guide for that one. So that was kind of a black spot on the rest of the game. But for the most part, I really enjoyed just the creative puzzle design, the fact that you have to go outside the game at certain points and just interact with things in weird ways. Of course, I love the art style and just the general sort of presentation of things. Like, you eventually find out what a few of the pets look like, and it is hysterical.
Oh, cool.
So I think if you have a lot of patience for weird sort of lateral thinking puzzles like this, then this is very cool.
Excellent. Yeah. You shared the link to this with me a couple of weeks ago when I looked it up on Steam, and I've not played the game obviously, but the artwork is quite striking and doesn't look like any other kind of horror game ever played. And obviously just the scenario of setting a spooky point and click adventure game in a haunted pet shop it's a very fun premise. So this seemed to sort of kind of hit all the right buttons. I'm glad you had a good time with it. It sounds very cool.
Yeah, I kind of just want every game to look like this. Like just the big bug-eyed characters, and even beyond the characters, everything in the pet shop is illustrated in this very like kind of simple and geometric way. At one point you even see outside the pet shop, and it just looks like a little Tupperware container that's just sitting on the ground, and it's like this box with rounded edges, and all the windows look like a little space capsule or something. It's really kind of hilarious.
Excellent.
So I really enjoyed that, despite a couple hang-ups with a few of the puzzles, but it was also just exciting once I realized what a few of the puzzles were expecting me to do.
Cool. So, given that this is sort of the spooky season, is there a spooky stripe to this, or is it all sort of done kind of goofy, kind of tongue-in-cheek?
Should I give that away? I don't know.
I'm a little mixed on it. Okay.
I don't know, because I went into this thinking, like, how could this possibly be scary?
Yeah.
But who knows? Maybe after an hour, it is just a nightmare.
Oh, really? Okay.
So,
cool.
I don't know. I think it's probably safe to say it never really gets scary. It's just kind of a spooky and cute premise. And you just have these weird-looking characters you have to deal with.
Yeah. You're not, like, looking behind you in the dark to make sure they're...
No.
Yeah.
No, not at all. So in that sense, I really appreciated that. Although I was sort of curious, like, how scary can you make a game that looks like this from the outset? Like, how scary can these characters get?
And the answer apparently is a little scary, right?
Well, I don't know if I'd go as far as to say it's scary, but
okay,
spooky.
To overuse our phrase of the week, spooky.
Yeah, I feel like there's a scale somewhere. And like spooky is towards the bottom, and scary is maybe like 60 or 70%.
Got it.
I don't know. We can get into that another time.
I'm with you though. Cool.
What else? You want to talk about Ghostwire or the excavation of Hobbs Barrow?
Yeah, I could do some Ghostwire.
All right.
So Ghostwire Tokyo. Where to begin with this? It is it's kind of a big open world horror game, I guess. Although it's again more on the spooky side than like blood dripping down the walls horrifying. Which is okay. That's fine.
It looked to me like it's more or less a third person shooter, right? But then all the enemies in it are these Japanese ghosts.
Yeah, kind of. It's a third person. It's barely a shooter because you don't really even get like guns and stuff. It's you're casting spells, so it's
okay. Well, like third person action game.
Yeah, and there's a melee component to it and stuff like that. At one point, you get sort of like a spectral bow and arrow and things like that. But at least in the hours of the game that I've played thus far, at no point do you have a machine gun or anything like that. But there are like different elemental spells and things that you learn, and you're casting all of this with your hands. So much of the game is you walking around the city with your two hands out in front of you like a dummy. And like tracing sigils in the air and casting fireballs and things like that. So the game starts with you in a car accident, laying in the street in Tokyo, in Akihabara. As you're sort of there, semi-lifeless in the street, a ghost takes over your body. Because that's what happens. Thinking that, well, you're on the way out, he can use your body for a little while. But you're not. You actually survive. And when you come to, You can still hear the ghost's voice in your head. There's a moment of like, oh my God, what's happening? Why am I hearing things? But not long enough for you to think too much about it, because immediately like a mysterious fog rolls through the city of Tokyo. And all of your fellow citizens essentially are raptured. They disappear.
Oh, that's not good.
And leave behind cell phones and piles of clothing and shoes. And the streets are abandoned. But on the fog has come sort of a parade of pretty horrifying and really kind of beautifully animated, traditional Japanese folklore ghosts. There are variations on the creepy schoolgirl and the Slender Man and the Ringu girl and things like that come marching in on the fog. And they are spreading out across the city, trying to sort of like find lost souls. People who weren't sort of raptured or carried away by the fog are represented as sort of this spectral mist kind of thing hanging in the air, and they're essentially feeding off of that. So the ghost inside your head is like, you have to help me. I want to borrow your body for a little while. We can take back the city. We can banish all these ghosts. And you as a human being have your own kind of agenda. I want to make sure my sister's okay, et cetera, et cetera. The voice inside your head has his own agenda and has unfinished business. So you're trying to sort of serve his needs as well. There is a fun fight between the two of them where you get a lot of character exposition and stuff like that.
Between you and the ghost.
Between you and the ghost inside your head, whose name is KK. Not to be confused with KK Slider, the dog that plays guitar from Animal Crossing.
He was not a ghost.
He was not a ghost, at least not as far as I'm aware. But yeah, you sort of walk around, and this is really cool because I can't think of any other game that does this. Basically, you have an open world map of a portion of Tokyo, where you can kind of walk around and go to convenience stores and go inside and outside of some buildings and up and down alleys and walk past nightclubs where you can hear music and walk past Tokyo bars karaoke bars where you can hear, the sound of whatever happening inside. And it's really cool. It felt like, oh, neat. And I'm not sure, I've never been to Tokyo or Akihabara, but so I guess I'm not certain if it's how accurate a depiction of it is, but I was like, oh, how many video games take place in Tokyo and allow you to sort of just wander around the streets? That's kind of neat.
Seems very like a difficult undertaking to create neighborhoods that size.
I imagine, yeah. It's very dense. There's a lot of little secret passageways and alleys that you can go through, and everything in Tokyo is something stacked on top of another thing on top of two other things. So you get little street markets with apartments above, and there's a verticality element to it later in the game where you get a tether that allows you to sort of zip to rooftops and stuff like that too. So you cover what feels like a lot of territory in this game. Some of it's kind of walled off initially by the mist. You have to find some mechanism of banishing the mist from certain neighborhoods before you can explore further. Those include you sort of purifying torii gates that are built around the city that have spooky Japanese ghosts haunting them. So it's a bunch of like knockdown, drag out street battles, essentially, with you throwing fireballs and casting wind spells and using your spectral bow and arrow to fight against an army of kind of spooky, pretty persistent, very aggressive ghosts that very much don't want you to take back the city.
I was going to ask how you go about purifying them, like if you had to hit them with a magic talisman or something, but you just shoot fireballs at them.
Mostly, I mean, you walk up to the gate and it says, this gate is connected to two other torii gates in the area. You basically put your hands together and like a screen appears inside the arch of the gate that tells you that, there's an X number of ghosts nearby. And you have little maps, little icons that pop up on your mini map, and you have to go, and there's a cluster of, the Slender Man that you have to sort of wipe out, or there's headless Japanese schoolgirls throwing fireballs at you that you have to sort of battle against. The combat is fun. I'm having a really good time with it, actually. It's a series of pretty complex moves that you learn, but the game is pretty smart about sort of layering them in over time. It's button presses and things like that. It also uses the touchpad on the PS5 in a pretty unique way, in that you trace sigils essentially on the touchpad, like I guess if you don't have a PS5, what's the comparable is a touchscreen or the trackpad on your laptop. So the game teaches you a couple of sigils that you can trace on it that do other things, that do spells and do unlock barriers and things like that. So you have to sort of know which sigil to use and when, and trace it on the trackpad of the PS5 controller.
Huh. And how is that? Was that cool?
It's fine. It's forgiving, thankfully.
Okay.
It's, I feel like, oh, well, I kind of screwed that one up, but 9 times out of 10, it does the thing that I want it to. So I think it's programmed in a way to be pretty forgiving.
It's just checking that you're writing anything at all on the trackpad.
I tried. I'm like, what can I just make circles? And it doesn't take that. It wants you to do something somewhat close to it.
Okay.
Yeah. You get different elementals, and there's a skill tree because it's a video game that came out in 2022 with a bunch of different unlockables. You collect like spirit points throughout the course of the game. It allows you to upgrade all of your combat abilities and things like that. There are things that you can use to sort of power up your attacks. You have to break down like ectoplasmic ether, whatever.
Of course, yeah,
around the
ether, sure.
Yeah, around the city, and that charges up your fireball attacks. So, the game conditions you pretty quickly to look for little shimmery bits around the city, fun little things that you can unlock. Anytime there's a cluster of like arcade games or vending machines somewhere in an alley in the city, there's inevitably a couple of things that you can sort of do a power move on, a punch move on, and it will ka-ching unlock, and you'll get a bunch of little Japanese coins that flow into your pockets. And you use those. I was
just going to say, like, you buy a drink from the vending machine, because that would be cool.
You can do that as well, and the drinks are consumables that you can use for
excellent
limited time buffs and power ups and stuff like that. One of the things that I
hate when there's a vending machine in the game and you can't use it.
I don't
why would
disagree
you put a vending machine there?
Yep. Yeah. And similarly, like every toilet, every faucet in a video game needs to make a flushy noise, and water needs to come out of every faucet. Like, if there's going to be a waterfall somewhere in your game, there needs to be something hidden behind it.
Be something behind it. Yeah. But like most importantly, the vending machines.
These are the unwritten rules of how to make a video game. I don't disagree. The good news is that Ghostwire Tokyo knows all of those rules, and it allows you to do almost everything that I want it to do. Their pets, people's pets, were not raptured. They're still wandering around the city, and they can see the ghosts. So sometimes you'll hear a dog barking, and that's your signal that, oh, there's spooky stuff around me. Which is kind of fun. I kind of dig that.
Sure.
And you can go up to the ghosts, the pets, sorry, and you can pet them, and sometimes they will lead you to like hidden treasures and hidden secrets, or you can read their mind, which is kind of funny, and you can see what they want. And sometimes you can buy dog food from the little bodegas to give to the pets and stuff like that. Kind of pointless, but also very satisfying in a video game. One of the other things that I really like is that all of the convenience stores are now staffed by yokai, floating little cat spirits, who will strike bargains with you and will try to negotiate and are collecting things from around the city. So if you find fun little treasures and things like that don't seem to have any kind of in-game value, you can sell them to the mysterious spectral floating yokai cats that run all the bodegas now. So this game goes extra hard on fun little pop culture things from Japanese culture. That I know from playing video games throughout my life, but are probably honestly actual parts of people's culture. But the developers are Japanese, so I guess they get to own that.
Probably know what's going on.
Yeah. It's fun.
Like the ghost convenience store cat, of course. We have to include that one in there.
Well, and that like every ghost in the game is some Japanese horror movie ghost you've seen at some point in every, I just feel like, again, required by law at some point to have the long, stringy-haired, dripping Ringu girl creep walking towards you at some point during a video game, and Ghostwire Tokyo does not disappoint.
Feels almost like a cliche at this point. Like,
bit.
Yes, of course, there's the Ringu girl, but like, what else you got?
Yeah. The game uses a lot of stealth and creeping around. Sometimes there's too many enemies for you to sort of take on, particularly early in the game. with a frontal attack. So you have to sneak around and try to accomplish your objectives. There are some very satisfying kind of like silent takedowns you can do, which seems really unfair if you're doing like a stealth takedown on a ghost, but whatever. It's a video game.
Why is that unfair?
You know, you would think ghosts would have better situational awareness, maybe. Like,
okay.
Yeah, this isn't like a Splinter Cell guard.
Ghost works.
I don't know. If I was ephemeral and I could float and occupy, and I don't know, I think I'd feel pretty resentful if some street dude snuck up behind me and I don't know, stabbed me in the back and separated my soul from my spectral corpse or whatever.
From whatever, your protoplasm.
Right, exactly.
Ectoplasm.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, sure, but unless you're one of those ghosts that has, you know, eyes on every surface, then...
Right.
I don't know how ghosts work.
It just seems goofy that, like, you know, the Slender Man...
the fact that you're sneaking up on a ghost is kind of hilarious.
Well, and that the Slender Man has, like, the same cone of vision as your average Splinter Cell idiot guard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever get to knock on a wall and Slender Man's like, whoa, what was that? Who's over there?
Like throw a can to distract him. No, there's nothing like that, unfortunately.
Oh, too bad.
Or fortunately, I guess, depending on how you look at it. So Ghostwire Tokyo does all of those things well. It's a very cool location with cool, creepy stuff from Japanese culture. Cool, like, kind of fun stuff from Japanese culture in a cool place that you get to explore. The combat is surprisingly fun and varied. It's not a pointless kind of brain dead shooter. It does something kind of other with that tool set, which I kind of like. It feels like everything in it is sort of the left hand power from BioShock, where the right is just you with a stupid gun all the time, but the left was all the fun stuff. It was all like the fireballs.
That's what you wanted to be doing.
You could throw bees at people and things like that. So it feels like everything you do in Ghostwire Tokyo is like the cool left-hand powers from all the BioShock games, which is satisfying, which I like. Unfortunately, that like it becomes diminishing returns sort of the further into it you get. That there are sort of these like secondary like side missions you can do, which feel very kind of not at all related to kind of the main path that you're on, and really just feel like filler.
They're just the side quests from every single video game at this point.
Yeah, it's just errands. It's just sort of like, oh, you know, there's a tanuki that you run across. And because, again, we're digging into everything from Japanese culture, the tanuki came to the city with 3 of his friends, and we all got separated. If you find 3 other tanukis around, this is one of the things.
The same side quest, but all the characters involved are from Japanese mythology.
Correct, exactly.
All right.
Or ghosts with unfinished business, and things like that. Of course. So that stuff feels dumb. And for the most part, I've ignored a lot of it. Like the payoffs aren't great. The rewards for doing it are not excellent. And it really just kind of takes you off the path. So I've ignored a lot of those. And I've just kind of stayed on the main path. I think the disappointing part about that, though, is once you get past the 5 or 6 kind of like Japanese horror movie archetypes, there isn't a lot of variety to the enemies either. That it doesn't sort of throw cool new stuff at you. You don't really get big bosses. There's like, you know, there's a medium-sized boss you encounter periodically. The voice inside your head, the ghost goes, "This one's bigger than the other ones. Better watch out." And he's a little tougher to take down and has better guard moves and stuff like that. But it's really just a slightly taller version of the Slender Man. So I think the game's sort of solution over time is to just throw more at you. So rather than it being 2 of the schoolgirls with a Slender Man, it's like 6 of the schoolgirls and 5 Slendermen. And it's, again, you're much more powerful at that point, and it's a whole like light show of you sort of taking them down. It's kind of fun. But again, once you get sort of into that routine, it's not throwing a lot of cool new stuff at you. So it doesn't feel, it feels a little less satisfying in its like 7th hour than it did in its kind of 1st and 2nd hour, where you were like, oh, cool, that's a new thing. Oh, neat, that's a fun thing I haven't seen before. As you get further into it, you've kind of seen and done it all, and it becomes a little less surprising every time it happens.
We should have
that said,
spaced
though,
out those ghost powers a little more.
Maybe. It's a beautiful game. It's the character design, the city design, the whatever you call it, the production design, the set design of this game is really well done. The voice inside your head kind of is an interesting character. You get some exposition from him and his life over time. The character that you are, the sort of the body that got overtaken, is a little less exciting. You're just kind of a nerdy street kid with a chest pack and a sister who you're really desperately trying to get back to, and that's like the only character you have throughout the entire game. But yeah, the banter between the two of them is kind of fun. You do meet other kind of fun little characters and stuff like that are kind of, around the city.
Do you ever get to meet one of those yokai that's like, the umbrella with one eye?
That I've not
hops
found.
Around.
No, they're all cats so far. That's all I've run into thus far.
Oh, I would love to fight a whole army of those things.
Yeah, the voice inside your head, without sort of getting into too much of that, because there are revelations that come with his character. He has a network of other people that sort of saw this thing coming, and there's an enemy that you're trying to take down that is responsible for the city being taken over by ghosts. And he has other contacts, and he knows like secret things around the city. So every time you find a phone booth in the game, it has a secret function, and I won't get into it here. But again, it's cool because they take things that are sort of like part of what you would think would exist in any city or in Tokyo, and give them an interesting kind of funny like shadow purpose. So the kid in the game, the kid that you play, is like, phone booths. I haven't seen a phone booth in forever. Are those still even in the city? But like, if you look for them, you find them, which is kind of neat. And they have a secondary function that allows you to do stuff in the game. And so there are a couple little things. I would say there's probably 3 or 4 little things like that in the game where it's sort of like, oh, these are just sort of things that sort of blindly disappear into the kind of the landscape of Tokyo. But in the context of Ghostwire Tokyo, have a fun kind of secondary application. That's kind of neat. So again, I think clearly a lot of like love and thought and world building kind of went into like, how do we take the city of Tokyo or Akihabara anyways, and a couple of neighborhoods around it over by ghosts, and what would it look like and how would it play and etc. And Ghostwire Tokyo does that kind of really well. I'm having a good time with it. In case you can't tell, I think it's fun. It has become a little less fun and a little bit more like a slog as I've spent more time with it. But the first like 3 or 4 hours of it, I was like, this is really neat. I'm having a good time. Why did I sleep on this? It didn't get the best reviews when it came out. I got the impression that maybe it didn't sell a ton of copies. So I was like, oh, I feel like maybe people are missing out on the Ghostwire Tokyo experience.
Well, maybe they just played it for a few hours and decided that was it.
Maybe. And maybe that's kind of the best way to consume it. But I'm kind of hanging with it so far, and I've had a good time with it.
Oh, cool. I was really hoping this did well just because it looked, it's like an interesting take on it. You don't really see a lot of spooky shooters. I mean, I know it's not a shooter, but this sort of adventure game.
Yeah, I think, like as a horror thing, like this is not Resident Evil, or what's another big horror property? Silent Hill is back, everybody. Silent Hill. They're making like 5 Silent Hill games.
Yeah.
This is not that kind of horror. This is not like blood dripping down the walls, jump scares, or anything like that. It really is just kind of like...
It's just like horror/ghost themed.
Sure. Horror adjacent. You throwing fireballs at ghosts in a city street, basically. It's cool though. I dig that. It's fine. It doesn't not everything has to be like horrifying abject terror.
Right. It's a horror game in the same sense that Vampire Survivors is a horror game.
Sure. That's a way to look at it. Absolutely. Where kind of spookiness and horror are like the color of the thing, but they're not like the fiber of the thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm really curious about this. I was very disappointed to see that it only came out on PS5. Still without a PS5. Despite them releasing, like, they had some weird prologue game that came out on PS4, and then just as a slap in the face, they're like, no, go buy the new one if you want to play the rest of it.
The prologue is a little like a graphic novel that sort of gives you the events of the game up to the point where you get into the car accident in the very beginning of the game. So you can play that on PS4 or PS5, but if you want to play Ghostwire Tokyo, like DJ said, you have to play that on your PS5.
Well, maybe someday.
Maybe someday it will come to other platforms, but for now, it is walled off on PS5.
Well, it does take advantage of that touchpad, so
yeah, that's true.
How could you possibly do that on another platform? I was actually thinking this would be amazing if it had come out on like the Wii or supported the Xbox Kinect or whatever, so you could just draw all the hand sigils in real life. Would be good.
Oh yeah, it could be a very cool, like a VR game even, or a motion control game. I could absolutely see that. Yeah.
You throwing fireballs around your living room.
Ghostwire Tokyo missed its window by about 10 years.
Yeah, it really did. Oh
well. So this is a fun game. I would recommend this if you get a PS5. I think the price on it is relatively cheap right now. They've got like a digital deluxe version of it in the PS5 shop that's not more than $30. I could easily recommend this thing. I've had a good time with it.
Nice.
Yeah. So let's wrap this up with the Excavation of Hobbs Barrow. What is that?
Yeah, so this is another point-and-click adventure game that I played. Didn't have time for it on Saturday, so we did a spooky Sunday. But this takes place in, I guess, like Victorian England. So, a while ago. It's not like in the present day.
Sure.
But you play as Thomasina Bateman, who is an archaeologist. Kind of an archaeologist. I forget how she describes herself. Like, she's like not even like a relic hunter or anything. Like, not quite Indiana Jones. But she goes around and excavates these barrows around England just to see, like, what sort of artifacts are inside and that sort of stuff.
Pardon my naivety, but what's a barrow?
A barrow, my understanding was that it was just a raised mound of land. But apparently it typically, like at least in this context, it is like a burial site.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So you get you encounter a barrow early-ish in this game, and it's like, it's just a raised thing of land. But Thomasina is all about it. She's just like, oh, this is amazing. It's
the best barrow I've ever seen.
I know. I was just like, I don't feel like I'm getting the full appreciation of this thing. Because she's talking about like, oh, look at, the shape of it and just the smell of the earth. And I'm like, okay, this is clearly, you're way more into this than I am. But whatever. You're the main character in this game.
Sure. I'm happy you found your thing, Thomasina.
Yeah. So anyway, at the beginning of this game, you get an invitation to come out to this little tiny town outside London, or like very far outside London because it's way off in the countryside, to dig up Hobbs Barrow, which is this very specific barrow. So you travel out there because you just can't refuse this opportunity, being a huge barrow fanatic. And then you spend sort of the first day in this town sort of trying to get your bearings in this new unfamiliar place and trying to figure out where your contact is, the guy who sent you this letter inviting you to this town. And it just kind of turns into a point-and-click adventure game at that point, where you amass a bunch of items in your inventory, and you have to use those items on other items or other characters in the village, and you end up talking to a lot of the townsfolk to just try and get the backstory of, like, what's up with this village, and what's up with this barrow. And it turns into this whole mystery, because you talk to a lot of people and they're like, oh, I've never even heard of Hobbs Barrow. And also, I don't know who this guy is you're talking about. And then you kind of realize that, oh, people actually do know about Hobbs Barrow. They just don't want to talk to you about it.
Oh.
And why is that? Because that's a little weird. So there's this sort of mystery going on. And this is supposedly a horror game, but it's not like, it's definitely not this sort of oppressive, like, survival horror, ghosts haunting you at every corner sort of feeling. Mm-hmm. It's more of this, or I suppose it's turning into this sort of creeping dread style, like Lovecraftian horror, where you really start to get the sense that, like, oh, we probably shouldn't be digging up this barrow, or at least that's what everybody in the town is trying to convince you of.
Mm-hmm.
But you're a firm believer in science, and you're not superstitious at all, so you're just going to go ahead and do it once you can actually find it. So it's a bit of an odd start because it takes place over a few acts, and the first act, like the first day you spend in the town, you're really just going around to like talk to the townspeople and like accomplish things like figuring out where your luggage is and trying to book a room at the inn. And I just thought, well, I was told this was a scary game, but at this point I'm really just doing errands and exhausting these conversation trees. But at the same time, it's very engrossing talking to people and trying to just figure out what's going on. It's got a real great sort of like rural England atmosphere, I suppose. Like, I imagine at some point Swery65 will be playing this because that seems to be what he's all about. But at the same time, I'm just like, okay, so when, like, do we get to go to the Barrow? Is this like waiting for Godot? There's like not actually a Barrow at any point. So just trying to figure out what's going on.
The Barrow was inside of you all along.
Oh, well, what a twist. But it's all, it's very well written. It's very entertaining. All of the characters and dialogue is fully voiced, which is really surprising.
Oh, wow.
And the voice acting is very good. So just enjoying, like, sometimes it almost feels like a movie or something where I'll start a conversation with somebody and just take my hands off the keyboard and let them carry out their conversation until it's time for me to select something else from the conversation options. So not exactly what I was expecting, but somehow very engrossing still.
Sure. And pretty ambitious, it sounds like, from a sort of indie game perspective.
Yeah. Really surprised by the presentation. Like the full voice thing really caught me off guard, but it's very cool. I am just kind of curious how much of a turn this takes in the final act, because I'm at the end of Act 2, it seems like, the end of the second day. And it really is just not scary whatsoever. Which, again, it's fine. Although this was billed to me as sort of a, scary point-and-click adventure game, and with Lovecraftian elements and like creeping dread and all that good stuff. So there have been some signs of that popping up, but I feel like, unless this takes an incredibly sharp turn in the final act, I don't know where exactly it's going to land on that horror spectrum. It may be a few notches above a Pet Shop After Dark, but certainly not approaching the Chilla's art level of scariness. But we'll see. We'll find out. I really hope that maybe I'll just come back here next week and be like, oh yeah, it was a nightmare and nobody should play this. But it would have there have to be a lot of developments between now and the end of the game for that to happen.
Well, I really want that for you, DJ. So I'm hoping that's where this goes.
Yeah, there are just so many like hints that something ominous is going to happen, but it is just so not in the character of the game from what I played up to this point.
Act 3, Thomasina checks into her Airbnb.
Yeah, it's like, oh, that's it. Oh, there was no Barrow after all, like you were saying.
Yeah. Good times.
So anyway, still really enjoying it, despite a bit of a slow start. We're just doing point-and-click adventure stuff.
Not the spookiest of Spooky Saturday offerings.
Not the spookiest, not yet. Anyway, we'll see how the conclusion ends up going. But I'm fully allowing the possibility that will happen because it's kind of headed in that direction. But it's just been so like light and easy going so far that it would be quite a contrast if the final act was just horrific.
Excellent.
Anyway,
right.
That is the Excavation of Hobbs Barrow. It's fairly, it was longer than I was expecting. It's like maybe going to end up being over 6 hours long, just hanging out in this village. But it's good. I'm having a good time with it.
Cool. All right. Well, that about does it for our Spooky Halloween show. A friendly reminder that DJ will be streaming some more spooky games, presumably the conclusion of Hobbs Barrow. And what was the other one you said?
Heaven Dust 2 will be this weekend. And then I have There's going to be a spooky block during Extra Life if you tune in late at night. Probably going to play another Chilla's Art episode and maybe some other stuff.
Excellent. That's coming up this Saturday. Go to VGHangover.com for info or twitch.tv/VGHangover.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you need any more video game hangover stuff in your brain, you should follow us on Twitter as well. You can go to twitter.com/VGHangover. You can always get show notes and links and give us feedback on this episode at VGHangover.com. We would love for you to hang out with us on Discord. You can recommend spooky games for DJ to play. You can get a link to that at VGHangover.com. And we would love for you to subscribe, rate, and review us on your podcasting app of choice. And, help us out. Maybe tell your friends about the show.
Yeah, really appreciate that. Helps us get the word out. We'd like to give thanks again to Saria Lemus this week for our intro and outro music. You can check out more of her work if you just go to pettypanol.bandcamp.com. You can buy her entire discography. That would be great.
Awesome. We'll be back next week. It will be decidedly less spooky.
Oh.
No, I know. Until then, this is Randy Dickinson.
This is DJ Ross.
I'm going to start playing all those Thanksgiving games now.
There we go. Yeah, we have it.
Thanks so much for listening to Video Game Hangover. Goodbye.
Good night.
See ya.